Previously on Bullshit Artists.
But his name was Dennis K, last initial, or maybe Dennis P. And his roommate wasn't there, but his roommate's name was Barry. I remember that. But Jesus, I didn't think to, take a FBI dossier on the man at the time.
Now, K wasn't an initial. K was his name. Dennis K. K-A-Y-E, like Danny K. I did hear him talk about the Jethro Spivey name once or twice. I believe he was using it as a pen name to try to get published. He said you needed to have a flashy name, and he just liked the name. He liked the sound of it. Lived in Hell's Kitchen. I think he hailed from Baton Rouge.
Are you sure you're not thinking of his friend Al Russo?
Yeah, but he was also from Baton Rouge.
What are the lies we tell others to help make ourselves appear sane? What is their substance? From whence do they spring? And why do they help ease our pain? What are the truths we keep locked inside, stored up on our secret shelves? Why do we seal them alone in the dark and hide them from even ourselves? That's an excerpt from the 2002 Spivey poem, Closets, Cupboards, and Cellars, written 1 year before he vanished completely from the literary scene without a trace. Now we're going to take a little detour in this episode from our investigation into the whereabouts of Jethro Spivey and look at his poetry, which we really haven't done yet. His poems are typically much more introspective than his plays, and there's a dichotomy at play in his verse that, I think, helps illuminate the Jethro Spivey narrative more than anything else that we've talked about. I'm Scott Gordon, and this is Bullshit Artists.
Scrotum moonlight. Assholes? Possibly. Testicles? Definitely. At night, when your lover shrinks from your touch like a penis at the sight of fire, sliding down the mountain, riding on the tide, nothing good can come of this. So you wait on the corner, bus pass in hand, as the stink of strangers infiltrates your nostrils like an aerosol poison pointed at your brain, threatening to penetrate your soul like an expired lover's corpse, lustful and rotting, as the scrotum moonlight shines down on this dirty planet of bleeding flesh, searching for another victim with eyes and cock of steel.
That's the voice of Jarvis Hilton, director of the 2012 Spivey documentary, Burn All the Art.
Like all his nasty stuff, I mean, he has stuff that's, sort of prosaic and normal, and then he's got the really nasty stuff. Scrotum Moonlight's probably my favourite, but you've got Jizz Potion number 9, Demon Dick, Chew Your Way Out, Taint and Tackle Box, that's a meanie. Furry Romeo, The Spasmodium, Emperor Dumbass, Ass Goblins, 15 Fuckers, Alien Penetration. The list goes on. There's a ton of stuff he did that just went completely against society. They're like a big fuck you to everything and everyone. And, you don't know where that angst came from. You don't know who this guy is. We still don't know. He's gone. No one can find him.
Well, actually, I think I might have found him.
Well, maybe you did. You haven't laid hands on him yet. He's an ether, he's out there somewhere. I like to think of him as like this mythical Sir Lancelot character that's still out there on the quest for the Grail. Or whatever.
You're a pretty outspoken critic of his later writings. You have some theories about why or how he lost his edge. I know you talk about this in the documentary.
Yeah, definitely. It's like in the mid-90s, there's such a tonal shift, and it's like someone sucked the venom right out of him. he was pretty punk rock. I mean, even me, I consider myself pretty hardcore, and I'm a big fan. But some of his stuff is still today. It's like, what the fuck, mate? It's like challenging me to keep reading. I mean, it's nasty, gross out stuff to be sure, but by the early 2000s, I mean, it's like someone else is writing the poems. It's been completely watered down. There's that edge is gone. And there's a lot of theories about what might have happened. Some people think he might have had a stroke. That's horrible to say, but you never know. He might have had a death in the family, a divorce. He might have had a come to Jesus meeting. There's tons of theories, and you can hear about all of them in my documentary, Burn All the Art. That'll be 10 quid. I'm kidding, I can't charge for it. It's free on YouTube because some douchebag uploaded it without my copyright approval. So pretty much I'm broke now, and YouTube can suck it. Yeah. And you can put anything on the goddamn YouTube. I'm sorry to get off topic here, but god damn it. You used to try to upload a song and they'd slap you on the wrist, just excommunicate you. Now you can, film your neighbor diddling himself and put it on there. Oh, there's nothing we can do. It's freedom of the whatever. Do a search on YouTube for donkey lover. Oh. Not a sexual thing, like you just really like the breed, right? I was doing research for a documentary, for Christ's sake. Some scary fucking shit comes up, man. Scary fucking shit. Guess what I'm trying to say is, fuck YouTube.
By the early 2000s, it's like someone else is writing the poems. Hilton isn't the only one who has this theory. Here's University of Alabama professor Nathaniel Jordan.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Spivey's content and style changed dramatically in the mid-90s. Mostly his poetry. His plays remained as wildly inconsistent as ever. In fact, Ape Fart, his last play, was one of his wildest rides. But his poetry... Here's a guy who in the late 80s was writing pieces about fucking puppies and eating kittens and all sorts of horrific acts. But by the mid-90s, he's on to the rote poetic themes of man's place in the universe and the duplistic nature of people. Just pretty cliched stuff. I'm not saying it was bad poetry. I'm just saying it was a complete departure from the Spivey that we had known. And keep in mind, this is around the same time he took a 4-year break from playwriting after he completed his Ass trilogy in 1990. He took about 4 years off from playwriting and also from poetry, although he did put out a few poems during those years. But when he came back to the fold, so to speak, it was a completely different writer.
A completely different writer. Just about everyone familiar with Spivey's work before and after the break has voiced that same opinion. Now, you may recall back in episode 1, I mentioned that I had a personal stake in this story. Well, that's because in my mid-20s, I began a poetry zine, a small press magazine by the name of Staple Gun Press, and published small press poets from around the country. And one of those poets was none other than Jethro Spivey. In the fall 1998 issue of Staple Gun Press, I published a poem called Asterix Dance by Jethro Spivey. And I'm not going to read it because I'm sure Nathaniel Jordan would tell me that it's one of those rote poetic themes that wasn't one of his better works, but I liked it. And I'd never heard of Spivey at the time, so this served as my introduction to the man and his world, what little we knew of his world. And here I am 20 years later, and I still don't know that much more about him. It gets murkier and murkier as I go, but I feel like I'm getting close to shading in some of those gray areas about Jethro Spivey and his life, or lives. Speaking of gray areas, remember this guy?
I'm gonna fucking sue your ass if you call me one more goddamn time.
Wow. Wow. So it's got to be Jethro Spivey, right? Or Dennis K, his alias, we think. Turns out it's not. I'm just as disappointed as you are. This gentleman is only 35 years old, and I'm not going to use his real name because he may fucking sue my ass. But needless to say, he's way too young to have rented an apartment in Hell's Kitchen in the late 70s. But I do have some good news. I located said apartment building. Remember Todd Rankin described it as a sickening lime green color? Well, thank you, New York Archives. I discovered that the building is actually, or was actually, called the Dugan. And sure enough, listed in the public records of rentals during that period, 1976 to 1980, one Dennis K. and, drumroll please, mysterious roommate Barry, last name Thompson. And I located Barry Thompson, who was kind enough to talk with me over the phone about his equally mysterious roommate, Dennis K.
Man, honestly, I don't know whether you're ever gonna find the guy. I lived with him for 3.5, 4 years, and I never saw him not once.
You never saw him?
I mean, I lived with him. Yeah, I lived with him, but I didn't see him. He paid rent. I heard his messages. So he was a real person. I mean, I think. I don't know. He had a room with stuff,
Right.
but, he to say he kept to himself is an understatement because I never saw the man. He was like a real life ghost.
So, how did you guys become roommates in the first place, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, man, you know how it is. I mean, one day you get kicked out of your girlfriend's apartment for fucking a peanut butter jar. And the next day you're down in the laundromat looking at the bulletin board, tearing off one of them sheets of paper that says roommate needed. And it wasn't like we was occupying the same floor or anything. I mean, I had upstairs and he had downstairs. That's probably why I never saw him, because whenever he was in, I guess, I heard the door open sometimes. But dude was like a phantom.
So, you don't have any, crazy roommate stories to tell me?
Oh yeah, dude did some fucked up stuff. His presence was felt, even though he wasn't around much.
Oh, really? Like what? Like, what sort of stuff?
He didn't do anything overtly evil, like kill my dogs or anything like that, but he did fuck with their heads. Filled them with little doggy self-doubt. Yeah, they were never the same after Dennis got a hold of them. Always self-conscious about their little doggy tails and real picky about their food, and they made friends with cats, which they had never done before, and I found kind of disturbing.
Really?
But, yeah, he was like the dog whisperer, like in a negative way. And, also, he would draw little cartoon nipples on the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models in the swimsuit issue. And he knew I collected those things. I had a whole back issues of these things, and he's drawing these exaggerated areolas with nipples and little milk squirting out, little droplets shooting out, and then he put little thought bubble coming out of their mouths going, "Ooh, Barry, get some of this nipple jizz." And I just found that juvenile as fuck. Not to mention ruining the value of these perfectly good Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues. Those things were collector's items, and now, thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it. Also, he would never flush.
Huh.
Number two, there was always a floater waiting for me when I went into the bathroom. And I just found that disgusting. Flush the toilet. I left him several passive-aggressive notes, but to no avail.
So, who moved out of the apartment first, you or him?
Oh, he did. In December of 1980. I remember it well because he left me holding the damn bag. He owed a month's rent, and he just up and left. I had to find a roommate really quickly, Had this big Samoan guy move in with me. You ever live with a Samoan?
No.
And this shit is rough.
So did he say where he was moving to?
He just left me a note one morning and said he was moving back home and he was going to do all of his publishing remotely from back home.
Any idea where home was?
Yeah, all I knew was from what the forwarding address on his stuff was.
And where was that?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
On the next episode of Bullshit Artists.
If he is dead, we could try contacting him via a seance, which we could perform here for you for the low, low price of $149.95. We accept Visa, MasterCard. No American Express. Those fees are outrageous. American Express can suck my dick.
Oh man, he was insane. Let me tell you, he had a glass eye that he claimed he could look around corners with. And he used to hang out after school waiting for kids with this 3-foot length of vinyl garden hose that he called the Snake. And let me tell you something, you did not want to piss off the Snake.